as I go. And so Phyllis has kind of set us up to tell the story. So I think I'll drop what I thought I was going to say and tell the story. My wife, Elizabeth, had entered the Master of Social Work program in the fall of 1989, and by Christmas vacation was not feeling very well. Some very strange kinds of things were happening, and ended up in the hospital in January. They diagnosed a brain tumor, inoperable, as a sort of subsequence of breast cancer. We took her home to die, essentially, in February. She passed away in June. We'd been together some 20 years, had 3 kids together, and in that process of having her at home in hospice care, which was a great thing to have, by the way, in terms of support, we had a chance to do what some of you professionals may call a life review. You know, I went up into the attic, got all the boxes, and unpacked them all with the kids' memorabilia, looked at all the home movies we had ever shown, all the pictures. It took about 2 months, I think, to get that done because of her physical condition as we went through the process. But at the end of it all, and again, she was 40 years old, I'm feeling like this is, way too soon. She looked at me and she said, "Oh, we sure did a lot, didn't we?" Which kind of made me feel good. And at the end of all of that, then we talked about her passing and what would happen as a result and what she wanted done in terms of funeral arrangements and so on. And she wanted to be cremated. We scattered her ashes at Lake of the Clouds in the Upper Peninsula, a place that we had often gone camping to. And there's a funny story, so I can tell you sometime about that, scattering the ashes with not realizing what happens when the wind blows. We had Liz all over us. And but after we decided on that, she had kind of an odd look on her face, and I asked her what was wrong, and she said, I kind of thought that there should be some kind of a memorial to prove that we had been here. And I said, with cremation you don't get that, but I will take some of the life insurance money and I'll talk to the school of social work about setting up a scholarship, having no idea what that meant or how I was going to do that. And to be honest with you, I don't think, former Dean Chestang's here as well, might remember that day I walked in, and I don't think the school of social work had much experience with scholarships at that point either. And so we had a couple of months' worth of conversation back and forth about how we might properly memorialize her life. The first suggestion, and Leon, I hope you don't mind if I tell stories on you, but his first suggestion is he said, my administrative assistant could use a new computer. And I said, Leon, I'm looking for something a little bit longer than that. That's got a shelf life of 18 months, and I just don't think that's appropriate. So we talked some more, and then he took me out to the window in his office, and he said, right down here it would be really nice to have a little courtyard with a picnic table for the faculty and students to have their lunch, and we put a plaque on the wall. I said, Leon, I was here at Monteith College in 1968, and I've seen buildings come and go. I don't think that's quite long-lasting enough either. So we continued the conversation for quite a while. And I told Leon a lot of stories about Elizabeth coming to social work as a profession. And about 2 years before she made that decision, she had worked on a contract job at Northeast Guidance Center advising truant children in the Harperwood School District. And she had been making progress. She thought one young student had met his mother and his sister. He was maybe about 11 years old, and had arranged to come back when the father was going to be home, and felt that she was going to make some progress because she could talk to the whole family as an attack unit. And so she came to the appointed hour and came up to the porch, knocked on the door, and the father was there, opened the main door but left the screen door closed, said, "What the hell do you want?" And she said, "Well, I'm sure your wife told you about the visits before, and I'd like to hear." And he stopped her cold and he said, "Just get the hell out of our lives. There's nothing wrong here, and we don't need your help." Now, this created kind of a crisis for Elizabeth that I think most professionals in a helping profession face at some point, and it's that principle of the right of client self-determination. You can't help someone who's not ready for it, who can't see that they need it, who can't admit that perhaps they could benefit from it. But that created a crisis for her because this is why she was in this field. It was her own need to help that drove her to social work. And she had to contend with that, I think, as part of the professional growth. And that was part of what led to her decision to enter the School of Social Work, because she felt with that experience she wasn't equipped with the tools that she needed to be able to effectively counter that kind of response and that kind of reaction. So Leon and I were talking about this, and we said, well, this is an area of professional growth and scholarship that there's not a lot written about. And so what we ended up doing is developing a manuscript competition where we asked students to submit a paper talking about their own personal values and the conflicts that come out of that value set when they're confronted with the realities of those that they serve. All of us go through that at one point or another. The work that I do is organizational therapy. I work for an accounting firm. There's dysfunction in accounting firms, okay? And I have to deal with that, but I've learned that there's a client readiness kind of quotient that you have to build to, and a lot of it has to do with starting out with the relationship. If you don't have the relationship of trust, it's very difficult to help. Even when you have the tools to help, if you don't have a relationship with the client, they're not ready to get help. So that was something I've learned along the way. Had an opportunity to listen to Ed Schein this summer, and if anybody wants to look him up on the internet, he's a great organizational therapist himself. He's written a book on process consultation that has a lot to do with, I think, the practice of social work. But he had 3 things that he taught in this class. He said, you've got to learn to think like an anthropologist. In other words, you have to kind of look at what is and just kind of absorb it. He said, when you get to the things that you don't understand, then you're going to finally hit what the culture is. The other thing that he said it was important to do was to intervene like a family therapist, to understand that organizations are not just individuals struggling any more than an individual that you practice with and help is just an individual. It's a system surrounding that individual that has to be considered as well. The third thing that he said is practice like an artist, which means you have to bring yourself into that equation. You have to know what it is that you're going to work with. Now, those are the things that get talked about in these manuscripts because most of the people who've written and won the award address those issues. That's one of the criteria. And I think we finally fulfilled what Leon said once we finally figured out what we were going to do, and then we moved to implementation. He said, Richard, I think what we'll do is we'll write Elizabeth's book a chapter at a time. So I want to thank the school for being the vehicle for my memorial to the woman I loved. That's really what this was about. And in a real sense, her work continues. And I think what pleases me most is that the work itself has now become fund-worthy. And if I never get to tell this story again, people can look at the work and say, that's worth supporting. And I think will stand on its own. Thank you very much.